Agent Romanoff. You miss me?
Oh yeah, Charles, we got ourselves an X-Men fan.
Captain.
Your Highness.
Captain, big fan, Spider-Man. Hey everyone.
Hey guys, and welcome to FilMonger, your #1 source for all things films and movies. And one thing that's come out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe that a ton of people really appreciate is the ongoing relationship between Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr. Not only did these two star together in Captain America Civil War, but also Spider-Man Homecoming, and they played a very big plot line together for the development of Tony Stark and Peter Parker throughout the later Avengers movies, but also it seems like they have this real-world father and son relationship at times with just the dynamic and how Robert Downey Jr. has kind of taken Tom Holland under his wing as a mentor in the larger navigation of Hollywood. And while we've looked at some of the greatest moments of these two together in the past, since then there's been a lot of really cool moments of these two together that's really awesome to take a look at and appreciate how in real life they've really developed an awesome friendship together, and sometimes there's some funny and hilarious moments in there as well. So we wanted to jump into this and take a closer look at some of these iconic moments. Like for instance, Tom Holland was in a new movie called Cherry that released earlier on this year, and Robert Downey Jr. actually was willing to step on board and host a digital panel to help promote the film. And it's just one example of how RDJ's gone above and beyond to really help Tom Holland out and kind of showcase an example of his friendship.
I wanted to ask you too, because you get to play an addict. I never got called, by the way, to be your special counsel. So, addict, a soldier, and a criminal. Which one of those was the most difficult for you to access?
I think physically and mentally, playing the addict day in and day out was really taxing.
If you remember back to way back when they were finishing up with Avengers Endgame, there was actually a really cool sit-down talk that Tom Holland was a part of alongside Robert Downey Jr. And we got to hear Tom talk a little bit about meeting Robert Downey Jr. for the first time.
And I remember meeting your double first and being like, wow, you look kind of different in real life. I don't know what. Yes. But yeah, no, I did the first screen test with you and then the second screen test with Chris.
But it looks like that wasn't the only great moment from this sit-down luncheon type video that was made, as we do get a little bit more insight between the dynamic that these two have.
On the day.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying that you wanted to change it back to what we did at the audition. So all of a sudden I was like, oh, I need to.
That would be the first time I'd ever said anything like that.
And that's why Tom was so great in that audition with Robert, because he was keeping up with them.
Yeah.
Off book. To some very funny, very funny.
Well, I was having a slow day too.
In a more recent interview, when Robert Downey Jr. was doing a promotional tour for the movie Dolittle that he starred in, he talked a little bit about the relationship that he had with Tom Holland and talked about his knowledge of random trivia, because apparently Tom Holland spends a ton of time doing pub quizzes. Essentially, it's like trivia night in a bar. And it's just cool to hear RDJ talking about trying to FaceTime Tom Holland and the reaction he ends up getting.
Here's a little fact for you too. Which country has more spiders per square acre than any other? England.
Interesting.
Yes.
Oui.
Hey! You're that spider guy on YouTube, right? Call me Spider-Man! Okay, Spider-Man! Go flip! Yeah!
It's a great pub quiz question, and by the way, if you want to come to my pub quiz, you're more than welcome.
I'm sure Tom Holland would ace it. Every time I FaceTime him, he's doing a pub quiz.
Some of you may remember this, but there was a ton of questions as to what would happen with Spider-Man in the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe after Spider-Man Far From Home would release. And for a while, it looked like the film would not exist in the MCU unless Disney and Sony made a deal, which ended up going through. But during that whole process, Robert Downey Jr. really stepped up and spent some time just hanging out with Tom Holland, with probably how crazy that week was and how stressful it must have been on Tom Holland, not knowing really what was going on with the future. And it was just cool to see the interactions and the posts on social media along the way.
The guys hung out together, proving that mentoring role that Iron Man played with for Spider-Man on the big screen is continuing in real life. Tom simply captioned the photo, "We did it, Mr. Stark," and they had some fun holding each other's action figure.
And I think capturing the reaction of every Marvel fan, Mark Ruffalo, aka Hulk, commented,
with the emoji of the face about to burst into tears. Yeah, so it's great to see that they're keeping that friendship going. And yeah, they don't seem too, like Tom Holland doesn't seem too torn up about it.
Yeah, I mean,
he's still getting paid.
He's still getting paid.
He's still getting the money.
2 movies. It's fine. I don't know. I mean, it's still disappointing. I think a lot of fans are still very...
Tom Holland also has shared a really interesting story where he talked about accidentally ghosting Robert Downey Jr. Definitely not something you would ever want to do.
I was, where were we? I think we were in London, and he FaceTimed me at 2 in the morning.
Okay.
And I didn't even check to see who it was. I was like, oh, who is that? And I, like, hung up. And then I woke up in the morning, and in my phone, he's saved as the Godfather. So I woke up and I panicked. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to ghost you.
One thing we think is really cool is that Robert Downey Jr., after leaving the Marvel Cinematic Universe, starred in Dolittle, and it's very likely that somewhere along the line, either the casting department or maybe Robert Downey Jr.'s suggestion, they decided to cast Tom Holland to be a part of the film as well, voicing one of the characters. First, we wanted to give a quick reminder, we do have a really awesome Instagram page that updates you guys on everything happening Marvel immediately. So if you guys want to follow us on Instagram, check it out, link in the description. There's also a ton of really awesome memes and other things that are posted on there. So make sure you guys are following that page, and let's go ahead and jump into this story. We actually saw Tom Holland bring his dog and also appear alongside Robert Downey Jr. at a screening of the movie Dolittle. But also Tom Holland did participate in voicing a character and appeared in some of the promotional material too, where we did get to see Tom Holland behind the scenes voicing his character, which is cool just to see Robert Downey Jr. and Tom Holland reunited in some type of film. Maybe something we'll see again in the future.
I just imagine you doing that in front of the bedroom mirror and your mum going, is he all right up there? I just double check. Yeah. Tom, so good to have you here. You've been a spider, you're now a dog. I don't know, how did you work on your inner animal?
I just based this character off of Tess, really. I just brought Tess to the studio and just...
Give me your hand for Tess. Look, this is our core audience right here.
Yeah.
There was also another interview that Tom Holland did where he talked a bit about why he misses working with Robert Downey Jr.
So what do you miss most about working with Robert Downey Jr.?
I just miss the fun that we used to have. We used to have a really good time and we really enjoyed working with each other, and the work that we were doing was always really good. But, you know, I'm sure it's not the last time I'll work with him. I'm sure we'll find something else to do together. He's a wonderful, wonderful guy, and I love him dearly.
And when talking about Spider-Man Far From Home in general, Tom Holland also talked a little bit about how he feels like the movie Spider-Man Far From Home was kind of a token of appreciation for everything that RDJ contributed to the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
His characters had the most incredible character arc from Iron Man 1 to Endgame, maybe in cinematic history. You know, and we said goodbye to someone who we all love, and we will miss him, and this film is kind of like a token of our love to what Robert Downey Jr. created, and Jon Favreau, and when he made those first 2 films. So yeah, so it's a really nice kind of love note
You
to
gotta remind
Iron
yourself
Man.
that Robert Downey Jr. is still alive.
Now, some of the greatest moments, of course, were when we did get to see Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr. together in person. And one time when they were doing a press tour, Tom Holland was joking a little bit about how in China they don't use Facebook. And Robert Downey Jr. probably did Tom Holland a solid in just avoiding controversy in China and kind of whispered something in his ear to just kind of divert the attention of the conversation, even though it was likely something innocent, just not to cause any controversy in the public eye or in press. Robert Downey Jr. probably did Tom Holland a solid just to not affect Tom Holland's career, especially with how important a lot of times investors look at international films and the Chinese box office.
But Facebook isn't...
Just hold it on him and we're going to get a lot of likes.
They don't use Facebook here in China. We should be using Facebook.
There was this really awesome time when we got to see Tom Holland alongside some other cast members of Avengers Infinity War do various interviews along the way, and whenever we got to see these cool interactions where Tom Holland was there with RDJ as well, it always seemed to just have these really awesome moments that just bloomed out of nowhere.
On Spider-Man 1, I remember when you first came in, I came in and I was also sick, and I didn't really know you all that well at this point. So you took me back to your trailer, and you hooked me up to this machine.
Oh, for real?
What machine? And you started prodding me with this thing. You know the thing that goes, and I just was sitting there like, just be polite, be polite. And you fixed me up real good.
So what excites you most about being back with the Avengers?
Well, I can't give too much away, but I mean, this literally feels like the second greatest story ever told. And there's so many characters and so much interesting stories, so many surprises.
So what do you guys think of Tom Holland and Robert Downey Jr.? Are you a fan of these two together? But that's it for today, guys. If you've enjoyed this video, make sure you guys are subscribed with notifications on for more videos like this uploaded every day of the week. But otherwise, that is it for today. We'll see you guys all next time with a brand new video.